Many of you in the comment section and in the community at large don't know all of the complicated terminology for Overwatch. There's a ton of niche Overwatch specific comms, strategies that you should know, and things that you can incorporate into your communication to have huge potential impact. But we've gained over 20,000 subscribers in the past 2 weeks, and if you haven't already joined, press that subscribe button because we're going to be doing tons of crazy content around the 30K mark and giveaways, so stay tuned. Now, the first term we gotta talk about is AKM Blade. Now, this is probably every Genji you get on your team, and this comes from pro player AKM who literally built a blade on Genji almost purely passively because he did no damage. And to top it off, the blade doesn't get any kills either, so you wasted all that time, like 4 minutes, to do nothing. We got C9, which comes from Protein C9, where they literally won the fight but didn't touch the objective and lost. So this is the absolute worst situation because the win was right in your grasp and you all got off of the objective. Don't do this. And enemies are going to type C9, and sometimes they'll type Z9 or G9 or T7 or A5. I don't even know at this point. Next up is Hidden MMR, which is the rank behind your rank. So players could have one rank, but really the system thinks that they are quite a bit higher in rank than that or lower in rank, but it's not reflected yet, and it depends on how well you're performing in your games, your win streak or loss streak, and it's basically the ranked system number that we cannot see. Next up is spawn camping, where instead of regrouping with your team, you're typically going towards the enemy spawn and trying to catch an isolated spawner that is basically just trying to regroup with their team. So imagine you're a tracer, and in the team fight, the enemy Ana died, and instead of regrouping with your team, as your team is regrouping, you go and spawn camp the Ana and potentially kill her, and then you get to go in with your team with a numbers advantage, and that Ana wasn't expecting you, she's just walking back to her team, so you get to get her by surprise and kill her. Next up is Choke, which is a funnel on the map that constricts the flow of people. So when you're defending, this is typically where you want to have your engagements and prevent enemies from pushing through because it denies them a ton of space. Another concept we'll get to later. Inting, or intentional feeding, and feeding is the act of going in and dying to the enemy with getting no value, and intentional feeding is where it's done so often it's like you're not even trying and you're doing it intentionally. So yeah, don't be an inter. Next up is meta, which stands for most effective tactics available. At least that's the acronym I use, and it's just about what is the most quote-unquote powerful characters that are played the most, but it is also important that meta is going to be very different from rank to rank, and players are going to be way more used to playing against whatever is meta, so an unmeta pick or an anti-meta pick is going to definitely throw them off because they're not as used to playing against them with less repetitions. Next up, we have squeezing, which is waiting to the last second to use an ability or ultimate to get max value. This is like waiting until your teammates are as low as possible before you beat on Lucio so that the beat lasts actually longer in the mid fight. So for instance, if you're all stuck in a grab and you know you're not going to die, instead of beating right off the bat, you beat towards the end of the grab and then you have a little bit of beat left over. This is squeezing, an advanced tactic that requires proper timing, that has the potential to get more value but also the potential to not work, and you don't ult in time and you lose. Next up is sandbagging, which is just holding out on abilities or ultimates, potentially waiting as long as possible or waiting until the next fight. This is basically keeping your cards hidden and looking for a better opportunity. Oftentimes people will sandbag ultimates. If the fight is already lost, they're just gonna save that ultimate for the next fight to win it. Ballooning means to spread out wide so it's much harder to get ulted by a crowd control effect. Botting out means you play like Coach Mills randomly in your games, which is never good. Pick means you're getting the first opening kill in a team fight. I got a pick means that you got that kill, or I got 2 picks, which means both of the first 2 kills were gotten by you. Scrims is an organized 5v5 held outside of the ranked system, often having far more communication and complex strategies. Punish means to capitalize on an enemy's mistake, whether it's their positioning or decision making, and the punish is typically a kill. Off angle is an adjacent angle to your team and the enemy, where you can still see your team, but you're far enough away from them so any damage or any ability that is being thrown onto your team will not affect you, and you can see the back line or other angles that your team might not be able to of the enemy. Flex, which means to swap off your main to a better character pick for the situation, or flexing to a character that you might not play but fits your team composition. LOS is line of sight, which is just who you can see and where you can see. CC, crowd control, which is something we mentioned, which is an ability or ultimate that allows you to control where an enemy is moving, whether you're booping them back, whether you're hooking them in, or keeping them shattered on the ground, or sleeping them. Every single one of these is controlling someone against their will and controlling their movement, so that is crowd control. Kite means to back up and heal up. Oftentimes, if you and your team have survived a really aggressive push by the enemy, you want to kite back and wait for your team to heal up, or wait for respawns to happen where you're still kind of in the fight, but you're not committing to it, and you're backing up enough to where the enemy can't easily kill you or collapse on you, waiting for that regroup, waiting for that health back up, and then you're going back in. Next up is Sustain, which just means more survivability. Sustain could be healing or armor or an ability that keeps you more alive. Trickle in is one at a time, dying again and again, going in like a freaking water trickle where you're not rushing in and actually getting anything done. You're sending one by one, dying again and again. Next off is Staggering, which is dying really late as your team is trying to regroup. Reset is waiting for all 5 to respawn and group up before you push in. Cheese Comp is something that gets free value by existing or because it heavily counters the characters that you're playing, like going against a Pharah Mercy when you have no hit scan and the Pharah is just spamming, or May Reaper Lucio just speeding into your team. This is pretty cheese, however, it also can potentially be just a good comp or win, so salty players often use this term. Dive, which means to engage the enemy specifically or their backline, typically with characters that have tons of mobility, that have the means to rapidly deal burst damage to a specific target. Backcapped is when the enemy sneaks in the objective capture, even though they never had a fight. You got to be careful when the payload is close to capping a point or finishing off the game if the enemy have characters like a Sombra or Tracer, or if one of them didn't die and he's sneaking behind you. Smurf is someone playing on an account that is not their main, typically far lower than their main rank. Alt is a practice account where you'll typically try and learn other heroes or just play without ranked anxiety. Overextend is pushing way too far away from your team isolated, typically getting you killed. Boosting or boosted is typically when someone is in a higher rank than they should be because they got carried or they paid for it. Purple is just anti-heal, which is mainly just Ana and now Junker Queen. One trick is someone who plays only one character no matter what, and it's typically a negative connotation because no matter how much this person gets countered, they will never swap. Space are the areas on the map that your team want to control and deal damage from, heal from, and occupy. Peel is to help a teammate or bailing them out from danger. This could be with heal, this could be with your presence and damage, or this could be with an ability like Diva's Defense Matrix. Fall off is damage that is lessened dependent on how far away you are from the target. Flick means to quickly move from one target to the next. Track means to follow them with your crosshair rather than move there rapidly. Clutch means winning a very close fight because you or someone else popped off. Word on the street is that subs of this channel clutch quite often. Whiffed means you flat out missed an easy ability, ultimate, or kill, and yeah, whiffing sucks. 1 HP is typically when the enemy has taken 1 single damage. Snowballing is running advantage and keeping the enemy staggered. NA ult is every single ult that I do, and honestly, it's just terrible ult usage. Stack is a useful call to tell your team to group up on something. You could say stack objective, stack me, stack high ground. It's a very useful, simple call. Toggling is an aimbot that enemies can turn off and on, so they could turn it off if enemies are getting suspicious of them aimbotting. Low FOV aimbot is an aimbot that only snaps to a target if their aim is relatively close as a means to hide their aimbotting status. Game sense is the heroes, maps, interactions, and understanding that you have of the game. Impact is your overall value in team fights and over the course of the game. Insta-locker is someone who typically locks right away and doesn't swap, goes negative. It's a pretty negative connotation. Hit scan is an ability or a fire that registers upon your crosshair and you pressing the fire button. There is no bullet travel time, which is the definition of projectile, weapons that do have a travel time, and every projectile speed has a varying range. range. Skill floor is the skill you need to have at a character to get base level value. So characters that are rather easy to get a baseline value with have a low skill floor, and skill ceiling is the maximum amount of value that you can get when mastering a character. So characters can have low skill floors and high skill ceilings, high skill floors and low skill ceilings, low skill floors and low skill ceilings. There's pretty much any combination of these. Last up, use, which is just a call to use your damn ultimates. Come on, man. Get the free dub. Press the ult. But I really hope that this terms list has caught you up to speed about all the terms in Overwatch 2 that you might not know. But if there's any I missed, definitely comment it down below so the community can learn from your insight, and smash that subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Check out the Discord, and I'll see you next time.